How can practicing with a hymnal make your jazz chords sound better? Let's open up one and see. Hi, my name is David Lane, and I like to help pianists and composers with techniques and strategies that will help them build and improve their craft. Hopefully I can help you too. If you want to play a lot of music in public, a great skill to have is to be able to play from a lead sheet. That is a single line staff with chord symbols written above. This is the standard way to play jazz tunes on a gig. Take something like Time After Time, one of the first lead sheets I assign to any student interested in learning how to play jazz this way. What's one of the main problems most students seem to have when they try this early on? Is that they're trying to adhere to a myth that they heard somewhere that the melody goes in the right hand. Because after all, the melody is written on a treble clef staff all by itself, which we usually play with the right hand. And the chords go entirely in the left hand. Well, that would mean that Time After Time would sound something like this. This sounds very messy for several reasons. For one thing, it's just too much texture. 4-note chords in the left hand and 1 note in the right. 4-part texture between both hands would sound much cleaner. The other issue going on is that by cramming all of the chord notes in the left hand and leaving the right hand to play only the single line melody, you're not observing the Overtone Series. If you want a deeper overview of the Overtone Series, I have a podcast episode all about it with some visual elements that I'll share here. In a very short, simplistic summary, it is a map of all the sound waves that vibrate inaudibly simultaneously with the sound that you actually hear when you play a key. If I play an A more than 2 octaves below middle C, you hear one sound. But these other sound waves are vibrating without making an obvious sound unless you were to mute the fundamental sound and isolate one of those overtones. This can be done on the piano, and I demonstrate that in the podcast video. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate what it sounds like, the Overtone Series, on an acoustic piano. This is just an upright, but let's take a look at what's happening. So the fundamental note I'm going to be using here is what we call A2. So it's an octave and a third below middle C. Sounds like this. Well, while you're hearing that note, you are hearing partial 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth, and then onward and onward. So we're going to isolate some of these harmonic overtones by me silently pressing one at a time. So like this is the fundamental note. I'm going to start an octave above. I'm going to silently press that note, silently as I can, and I'm going to quickly hit the fundamental note, the A2. If you were to replay that, you hear a lot of these notes being activated by the combination of the fundamental and silently pressing that overtone. It's a very chime sound, okay? So the next note I'm going to press is E4. This will be partial number 3. And I'm going to hit the A2 while I hold that down. There's a bit of a chime on that E, and you can hear a faint bit of the next note, which is partial number 4. This is the A4. And we'll hit that A2. You hear a chime on that note, but you also heard a little bit of the C sharp and E. And all those other overtones are there as well. It's just we can't hear them. They're very faint, very silent. The audible note is the one that we isolated, or the fundamental note as we play it. This works on all of the keys. Again, I just used A for the math. So one more thing, just for fun, I'm going to play the A2 fundamental, but I'm going to hold down, let's do multiple partials. So I'm going to hold down the third, fourth, and fifth partial, which is E4, A4, C sharp 5. I'm going to hold those down quietly while I play the A2. all three of those notes are chiming, and I also heard a little bit of the next partial, which is the E5, going as well. If you just play a normal note without isolating an overtone, what the overtones are doing is providing resonance or richness of tone. If you play some of the other overtones above the same starting low A, you emphasize the natural resonance or richness that naturally fits. Now, for the sake of playing rich chords, you can ignore everything I just said and focus on the pattern of overtones in a series. It starts one octave above the starting note, then a fifth, then a fourth, then a third. Let's stop right there and play that chord. It's bright and rich. Now let's look at a simple takeaway from this. The notes are spread out in the left hand and they're closer together in the right hand. Music doesn't do this without exception, but if you make more chords than not fit this overall pattern, you're going to have a more professional and a cleaner sounding voicing. Let's take two versions of a C major 7th chord with the C above middle C being played on top. I could cram a 4-note chord in the left hand like this, or distribute the notes with a wider gap in the left hand and closer together in the right hand and get this. So what's a good way to learn playing 4-part voicing that follows this shape of 2-hand chord shapes? That's right, a hymnal. Now, my experience is with a few Protestant hymnals instead of Catholic or other denomination. Really quick, if you're thinking, well, I'm not religious, or this is against my preferred religion, I'm not talking at all about the text. I'm only using a hymnal as an example of this type of musical writing. I'm going to play the first phrase of O Come All Ye Faithful. Now look at the first few chords. One thing you have to know when you're playing a hymnal, you have to learn, is that they were composed to be sung, not necessarily played. So when you play these on a piano, you often have to grab tenor notes with the right hand because the tenor note is less than an octave away from the soprano note, but more than an octave from the bass. As you play this, you'll find that you have two types of 4-note voicings. 2 notes in the left hand with 2 notes in the right hand, or 1 note in the left hand and 3 in the right. What don't you have? You don't have 3 notes in the left hand and 1 in the right hand. That would not sound very appealing. But that's exactly what you're doing when you try playing a melody with only the right hand and all of the chord notes in the left hand. Playing hymns will give you familiarity and practice with good, solid voicings that correspond to the Overtone series. So now let's apply that to a jazz standard like Time After Time. If I decide that the right hand has to play the melody note as the highest note of the overall chord, and that the designated bass note given by the chord symbol must be the lowest note, then I use the rest of both hands to fill out the chord. Now I'll go through the first phrase of Time After Time slowly, and notice how that looks like a hymnal voicing with occasionally a 5th note in the texture and much more frequency of 7th chords. I'll have more to say about jazz voicings, but in the meantime, go buy yourself a secondhand hymnal if you don't have one, or borrow one from a church and start playing as many as you can, and notice how you move from chord to chord, then replicate that feeling when you play from a lead sheet, and you'll experience the same quality you get from a well-composed 2-staff chart. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would please subscribe to this channel, hit the like on this video, and please feel free to share it with someone else who might also find this helpful. Also, let me know in the comments section of this video what kind of videos you would like in the future. Again, my name is David Lane. Good luck with practicing.